Hi, troops. How are you? How are you? Thank you very much for having me again. One of the things I want to talk tonight about is the hopelessness that pervades the usual conversations in Washington about Africa. You know, so many people believe that Africa is a continent of hopelessness, that has no future, that is full of death and despair and destruction. And most of these people then feel that there's nothing that we can do about Africa. And I think in order for us to be successful in our mission of bringing the longest running war in Africa to an end, the war caused by the Lord's Resistance Army, I think we have to know a little bit about the hope that is resident on the continent of Africa that we never hear about, because in our media, if it bleeds, it leads. They want to see starving babies. They want to see the flies covering the little kid. They don't want to hear about the success stories because that's just not interesting. That's not newsworthy. But let me tell you a few stories real quickly, because we need to know that there is hope for the people of northern Uganda, for the people of southern Sudan, for the people of Congo, for all of those kids who have been abducted by the Lord's Resistance Army. You know, Sierra Leone, a country in West Africa, a small country in West Africa, was at war for 15 years. And it became famous because of the movie Blood Diamonds and the campaign that was launched as a result of the war over the diamonds in Sierra Leone. And in Sierra Leone, the rebel group used amputation of limbs as their method of their weapon of choice in their war against the government to control the diamond mines. Well, because of people like you, people all over the world who rose up and said, you know what, this is simply unacceptable, and we want our governments and our corporations that buy diamonds to stop doing, to stop business as usual and to invest in a solution. And now, today, Sierra Leone is a country completely at peace. It's a country that is a thriving democracy with an economic growth rate higher than that of the United States and most of Western Europe. This is an incredible success story. No one even knows about it. In Liberia, the same thing, next door neighbor to Sierra Leone, where for many years a terrible war unfolded in that country, also partly because of the natural resource wealth of West Africa. And eventually, the American government, the British government, and a number of governments from West Africa got serious about a solution. And they intervened, and they undertook a very serious diplomatic campaign, and eventually, the president, who was the cause of all the problems, Charles Taylor, was finally driven out of the country. And now he's in The Hague facing at least 12 counts of crimes against humanity for the horrible things that he did to that country. And Liberia today is a country that's completely at peace. It's a country that is finding its way forward and that just elected, just a year and a half ago, the first woman president of all of Africa, Ellen Johnson Sirleaf. These are dramatic stories of hope and transformation. South Africa, all of you know. You know, 20 years ago, people thought that was one of the most hopeless places on the continent. In fact, in the world. It was a country in which racial discrimination was codified into their law, and that non-white people did not qualify as full human beings. And then we all know the story. People all over the world rallied against what was happening in South Africa. They created what was called the anti-apartheid movement, and they worked economic levers, and they worked political pressures, and they came to Congress just like you did today. And they demanded the American government at the time, the administration of Ronald Reagan, change the policy and become much more, and put many more pressures and remove a lot of the business as usual and the economic trade that we were having with South Africa. And eventually it worked. Nelson Mandela was freed from prison. They had an election, a free and fair election, and today South Africa is controlled by the majority, and we just had another election, the third cycle of elections, free and fair elections they've had since the end of apartheid. That's because of an international global movement of people like you who care about human rights and justice. Tonight, we need to make the same kind of commitment, and I think we have. Over the last 2 days, we've made a commitment to end one of the most horrible scourges on the face of the earth, which is the crimes that have been committed by Joseph Kony and the Lord's Resistance Army, particularly against children, all across Central Africa. We've made the Lord's Resistance Army, let's not forget why we're here. 2 million people were rendered homeless because of this war. Tens of thousands of kids have been abducted because of this war. And thousands of people, we don't even know how many people have been killed in the forests of northern Uganda and southern Sudan and northeastern Congo. For 2 decades, there have been attempts to have peace processes with the leader of this organization, the Lord's Resistance Army, with Joseph Kony. And for 2 decades, Kony has refused to participate, has refused to negotiate in good faith, and when a deal was actually structured, he refused to actually sign the deal. So let's get this straight. One guy says no, and thousands of people will be killed over the next few years. We can't allow that. One guy says no, and thousands more kids are going to be abducted. We cannot stand by and allow that. One guy says no, and millions more people are going to be rendered homeless. We can't stand by and allow that to happen. We're here to answer that tonight, answer that call tonight, that 911 call that those little kids all over Central Africa are making to us. And every one of you has stood up, you've answered the phone, and you've showed up in Washington, and you've told your representatives and your senators that it is simply unacceptable for human beings to be treated in that way. And I applaud you for what you've done today. The Obama administration has a central role to play in removing Joseph Kony from the battlefield and ending these terrible human rights atrocities. We're here tonight to stand in solidarity with the kids who have been abducted, with the women who have been raped, with the families who have lost their fathers and mothers and brothers and sisters to this horrific insurgency. Also here tonight to stand for a solution, to demand an end to this scar on the face of humanity, to ensure that the Obama administration and this Congress hear our message loudly and clearly so that peace is possible and that Kony is taken out of the equation. So I would conclude with just saying, answering the question that may be on some of your minds, what did we really accomplish today in Washington, D.C.? What did we accomplish today by going and spending time with our members of Congress and our senators? Well, I can tell you, as I moved around Washington all day today, I got one call after another on my cell phone from members of Congress, from senators, from staff assistants, and from people on Capitol Hill saying, who in the heck are these people? They were impressed. You have shaken up the status quo on this issue, and it will never be the same again. Because now these members of Congress cannot say that they do not know. And once they do not know, they will not be able to turn away, because you have to go home now to your districts, wherever you live, and you have to go after these members of Congress and say, remember what we talked about in Washington, D.C. We need you to follow up. It's our job. Those kids in Central Africa are relying on us. It is in our hands whether this war ends or not. I can tell you that from 25 years of working on Africa policy. If they don't hear from you, if the administration and Congress doesn't hear from you, nothing's going to happen. But if they hear from you and the administration gets excited about this issue because they know that voters all across this country care about what they do, then they are going to pay attention and they're going to act. And when the United States acts, when we really take a significant interest in a solution to a problem, and we don't have an economic interest in the place, we're not trying to get oil out of the place, we don't have a particular mineral interest, we just want to see a solution to one of the world's worst conflicts. And if the United States, if President Obama makes that commitment, which he will, if Congress shouts loudly enough and if we shout loudly enough, we have the chance to end one of the worst human rights crises in all the world. And that's because of what you did today. Thank you so much.